Video, I think at the end of the day, man, even if you don't think you're good on video, I think you need to get practice. I really do. I know that's me being biased, but everybody is going down the route of video. And in today's world, unless you have a business where it's a local business and you're teaching workshops locally, that could be awesome. But if you want to attract clients from all over, video is the fastest way to build trust. It really is.
Hey there, everybody. Dominique Henderson here. Want to bring you another conversation that I recently had with a new friend of mine, Whitney Hansen of the Money Nerds podcast. Whitney is a very successful financial coach. When we talked, she was just off of FINCON 2019 in DC this year, where she actually had a segment which she spoke at. And she is very, very passionate around financial literacy, financial education, and her coaching business. So we got into all types of topics into this conversation. I will link the full interview down in the notes, which will be on my website for you to peruse. But we talked about so many different things and had a really great time. We also talked about what financial coaching is. If you are looking at this video and you're thinking that you don't want to travel down the traditional path of financial advisor or financial planner, you can be a financial coach. Here's Whitney's take on exactly what that is.
So just to give everybody context, let's start with what the heck is a financial coach? It's basically somebody that is helping people with the day-to-day of their lives. This is stuff like budgeting, paying down debt, getting your savings account set up, education on what is retirement, but not giving retirement specifics. So I think that's kind of where a lot of financial coaches will kind of tread that line, but legally you cannot do that. As you know, you cannot do that. You can't offer insurance advice or anything like that unless you're qualified for that. But that's what a financial coach does. So they work on goals, mindset, budgeting, saving, the basics of your finances.
Like I mentioned, Whitney was just fresh off of FinCon when we had our conversation, and she identified a super big opportunity for anyone out there that was willing to take it on. Here's what she said.
Oh, it was exhausting in a great way. 2,500 people, everybody gets together. The conversations are amazing, but the downside is if you are a very introverted person, I'm not, I tend to be a little bit more introverted after the conference, but if you are an introverted person, you have to put yourself out there. And so that is one of the best conferences by far. Conversation is incredible. You meet some people with some killer stories, but you will lose your voice. So I just got my voice back today. Thank goodness.
So what are some takeaways? You said you have really great conversations, and today we want to talk about, I think what we chatted about briefly was this industry is changing so much, and financial coaching, which I'm happy about, is giving the industry a much needed facelift, or at least some additional perspective. So I'm sure you met a lot of those people at the conference. Kind of give us some of your maybe big ahas and takeaways.
I'd say that was one of the most interesting pieces. Is I've gone to this conference now 5 years in a row. And this is the first year where I have heard more people introduce themselves as a financial coach. And the cool thing about it that I think is interesting for you and your listeners is a lot of these people used to be financial advisors. And now they're going down the financial coaching path because, as you know, the regulation is crazy for financial advisors. And it was so fascinating to see how many people are going the financial coaching route. So that's the interesting thing. Yes. So there was a combination of YouTubers that had big audiences that were then turning into financial coaches because they had so many people that were reaching out for advice. There's podcasters like myself that have been educating and then finally want to work with people one-on-one. A lot of the financial advisors that realized they were doing their clients a disservice by not offering some type of service there. So it was all across the board, but it was mostly all online. And I think that's the cool piece is we hear a financial coach and you immediately think, oh, we have to sit down in Starbucks together at my office and do all of the things, but you don't have to. You can meet virtually. And that's one of the cool pieces. One of the opportunities that I saw, so if anybody listening in is really good and very tech savvy, there's not currently a platform that works for financial coaches. There's a lot of software for advisors where you can log in and have each of your different portfolios for your clients. That doesn't really exist for financial coaches. I met one person that's doing that in Australia, nothing here in the States. So that was something where I was like, aha, if I was a tech savvy individual, I would do that. I'm not. So somebody else thrown out that idea, but it's an opportunity for sure.
Whitney has a very successful podcast called the Money Nerds Podcast, and she interviews and tells a story of everyday people, people, just regular humans that are going about their financial journey, paying off debt or whatever they're doing, and some of that I think is so important for nowadays because everybody just wants to hear a good story. Here's how she got started with the Money Nerds Podcast.
Yeah, podcast started from hearing really cool stories, but it came from my own personal experience. I graduated from Boise State University with my bachelor's in accounting, not because I loved it, because I was 3.5 years in before I realized I didn't love it and was committed. So I was like, you know what, damn it, just got to stick it out and then keep going forward. Don't recommend that, but that's what I did.
Yeah. Got it.
Graduated with 30 grand in debt. Now, 30 grand in 2010 was a lot of money. It's a lot of money even in 2019. But I knew immediately that it was heavy because I felt how it was making decisions for me. So even down to what jobs I was going to take was completely dependent on my student debt. How can I pay this off as quickly as possible? And so I didn't like that. So I put together my own plan, very, very novel plan of budgeting and working a lot, just super crazy stuff, just hustle, and paid it all off in 10 months. And then started helping people do the same thing. And so that's where the whole personal finance business kind of blossomed. But the podcast came directly from FINCON because I was talking to people with really cool stories and hearing the way they were approaching life and retirement and just making all these different decisions. And there wasn't really anybody sharing those kinds of stories. It was always the expert level, the Pat Flynn's and the Tim Ferrisses of the world. Those were the stories that were being told. And I think those are powerful, but the day-to-day stuff wasn't there. And so that's really why I launched the podcast, is I wanted to highlight people that were doing cool things in their everyday life. And that's where it all stemmed from.
That's really cool inspiration though, too, because I think a lot of people have those ideas about, podcasts. I have the opportunity to coach, advisors every month, probably about 4 to 5 right now. And I think a lot of them don't want to come out of their shell for a couple of reasons. The first is, okay, can I say this? The regulation part that we talked about.
Yes.
And then the other part is just not wanting to really put themselves out there because there is this level of, I will call it, fake prestige that you have to have as an advisor, that you've already made it, you've never made any mistakes, and your clients are looking up to you, and so therefore you kind of feel a little weird doing these podcast or Instagram movie or all this kind of stuff that
Totally.
doesn't seem like it fits, right? But I think that's what people want to hear, right? You probably heard this over and over again.
Oh, totally. I think that's the biggest misconception. And I think what we're going to see, the people that go out of business are the ones that feel like they have to be perfect all the time. The ones that feel like I can't show up to a client meeting in jeans and a t-shirt because then I'm not professional. Now, if that's your brand and you do that, great. Dress up all you want. For sure, be authentic to who you are. But it's the people that aren't being authentic and feel like they can't show that they're a human and they make mistakes and they're not perfect. I really believe we're going to see those businesses go under, because in today's world, millennials, especially, largest generation we've ever seen, they want people that are relatable. And unfortunately, the relatable pieces that a lot of advisors come to the table with of being kind of stuffy and perfect and jargony, that's not going to work. It's not enough. And so I think that's a really missed opportunity. And I think we're seeing the advisors that are succeeding today are the ones that are not using as much jargon, spending more time teaching, and really highlighting the other areas of the industry that are kind of confusing. They're making it simple to understand and they're being authentic. Those are the ones that are kicking butt.
No, I love that you say that, because I think one of the things that was my aha when I started my firm was that I want relationship. I don't want a big gargantuan firm. I want to treat everybody like family, because at the end of the day, we're all humans, right? The whole point about the education is great and the information is great. However, everything's at the fingertips right now. Google, YouTube, you can get all that stuff already. So like, my value proposition does not need to be how to rebalance your portfolio or asset allocate. That's just not a value anymore. But how do you feel when your kids leave the house and you now have just you and your spouse, and now you got these other decisions, like life takes a turn? like, can you pick up the phone and call your advisor and talk about that? Right. So
Right.
I think those are the more salient points of this profession going forward. I may be wrong, but I think there's a lot of people like yourself that agree with me that, you know, people are craving that relationship.
They are. Well, even like what we were talking about, you're saying you're going to be an empty nester. And just at the end of the day, if anything else, from a sales perspective, we buy based on emotions. And when I feel like, oh my God, I'm also an empty nester, my kids just moved out too, you actually understand what I'm going through. That builds that relationship, like you said. And more than anything, it builds that lifelong customer. And I think if you're thinking just the lifetime value of a customer, that alone should be enough to make you at least say, how can I be more relatable so that we have a connection point?
I really valued Whitney's perspective because having done the financial coaching so successfully and the podcast so successfully, I was interested in her advice to entrepreneurs about what platforms they should use, how they should be unique in their own message to attract the clients they want. And this is what she had to say.
Yeah, so this is twofold. I'll tell you the platforms that I think are easy wins for right now, and then I'll tell you the platforms I think we should all keep our eyes on. And
Perfect.
so the first ones that I think are good platforms are, yes, podcasting. I know it seems like a really scary thing. The good thing is you're behind a microphone. So if you don't have a face for video, this is always the running joke in podcasting, then you're great. Don't worry about it. So you can be really authentic. You can be really nerdy. You can be whoever the heck you are through your podcast and not feel so awkward with video. That's an awesome way to go. 51% of the US has actually listened to a podcast. 49 have not. So there's still a lot of growth. There's a lot of opportunity to get noticed in that area. Video, I think at the end of the day, man, even if you don't think you're good on video, I think you need to get practice. I really do. I know that's me being biased, but everybody is going down the route of video. And in today's world, unless you have a business where it's a local business and you're teaching workshops locally, that could be awesome. But if you want to attract clients from all over, video is the fastest way to build trust. It really is.
Let me just say, because I'm going to play this clip over and over to the people that I coach because everybody's like so afraid of video. I had two ahas. The first was I'm trying to get people to, you know, feel authentic with me,
Yes.
but I'm hiding behind a microphone and I'm not showing my face. That was my first aha.
Right.
And the reason why I got on video. Because I'm like, I'm asking people to trust me with their money, but I'm not even showing my face.
You're not showing up. Yeah. Oh, that's huge. Yes, you do. When I started doing YouTube forever ago before the podcast, and it took me 2 months, which I'm humiliated about, 2 months to publish my first video that got maybe 20 views, of which 15 were probably me. So I'm like, why was I so concerned about that? We're so afraid of what everybody's going to think when at the end of the day, nobody's freaking watching. So you don't have to be concerned.
And your Instagram story just said it, because is it you can't or you won't, right? Because at the end
versus
of
won't.
yeah, like I think one of the things that has helped some of the people I've seen that have been most successful that I read about or whatnot, they've made a conscious decision, a very intentional decision to like, I'm going to do this behavior whether or not I like it or not. Like it doesn't matter what I like. I'm just going to do it. And the consistency and the discipline is going to get me the reps that I need in order to feel confident about it. And I think at some point you just got to do that.
You do. And to be fair, video, podcasting, all of this stuff, even being a great advisor, it's a skill that you learn over time. You're not going to be perfect. So if you're like, oh, I'm not good on video, how do you know? You haven't given yourself the chance to practice and to try and improve your skill. There's plenty of free resources out there that will help you, but don't discourage or diminish this just because you haven't really given it the fair shot. I think everybody can be great on video. I do believe that. I think it's a harder platform to learn, but I think it's important. I really do. And I think if you can get into that flow, eventually you'll get really good at it if you practice.
No, I agree. So podcasting, the audio portion, the videos, those are the two platforms that are probably out there. You named a couple that may kind of be behind the scenes.
Yep. And then of course the traditional blog. I think if you are a phenomenal writer, you have really interesting, unique perspectives, blogging is not dead. It's still very much alive. And I think there's still a lot of opportunity for growth for you to share your own ideas. Ideally, you're doing a blog in combination with some type of a podcast or video embedded within that blog post. I think that's the most biggest bang for your buck that you can get. And then if those platforms are not for you and you're trying to grow your firm, I don't know what to tell you. Like, you have to embrace this. Like, you can probably do other things, but those are the fastest way to scale your business. And if you're not willing to embrace that, you probably aren't going to have a business.
Well, it's not 2001 anymore where you can buy Google AdWords for, like pennies on the dollar.
No,
So you might have to,
you could
actually.
try. Well, okay, there's two things. So part of this is cultivated brand, the persona I want people to recognize me for. So am I 100% authentic? No. I cuss a lot more in my real life. I try to tone it back in my personal brand, just
Yeah,
being
yeah, yeah.
honest.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things that I would say at home that I would never put out in public. So I think that's the important piece to know is you have to curate your brand. So the brand that I chose to cultivate was the highlighted side of me where I'm goofy, I'm playful, I like to have a good time, but I can also get really serious and dive into the numbers. And so that was the piece that I wanted people to know. But more than anything, I wanted it to be approachable because my target audience are millennials, 25 to 35, that are scared to death and have a lot of debt and feel overwhelmed. So if I'm that person that feels that way, I need something that's going to be approachable and somebody that's not going to make me feel like crap about my situation. And so that for me, it was thinking through, if I were in that situation, what kinds of people would I want to chat with? It's not going to be the ultra buttoned up person that has the suit and tie and never talks about ever failing with money. It's somebody that is very honest and approachable. And so I'm really careful about that when I do my personal brand. It's not for everyone. I'm probably not going to get hired by Goldman Sachs to do public speaking for them. That's okay. I'll get hired by universities. That's okay too. But I think it's really important to know, what is your target audience like and what do they need, and then show up as that person if it truly is authentically you. No, I think for entrepreneurship, it is very difficult. I have very strong opinions on this too. It's incredibly difficult, not because it's a hard thing to do. I think starting a business is actually pretty dang easy. The concepts are super, super simple. Have a solution to somebody's problem and sell it. Okay, that's it. The tough part is trying to speak their language and trying to get to a point where you actually understand their problems. That's the part that gets so hard. And then entrepreneurship in general is extra lonely because you feel like you're the only one going through this stuff, even though you're not. Nobody really is. We have plenty of people we can call on, but it does feel that way. So I think that's where mastermind groups come in, of just meeting with like-minded people, not necessarily in your industry. In fact, I encourage you to go outside of your industry. I think you get different perspectives. And then more than that, just understand that entrepreneurship is not something that's going to happen overnight. Growing an amazing business that supports you and your family or whatever it is, it's going to take time, a lot of time and a lot of patience. And you have to work on your mindset every single day or you will quit. My first year of business, I think my fiance was so sick of me because every about 15th of the month, middle of the month, I quit my business in my head probably a million times. Every single time I'm like, oh, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. This is too hard. It's too awful. And I think we all go through this, but you just have to stick it out and just be patient and work on your mindset big time because everything is very figure outable, as Marie Forleo says. You can figure this out if you just put together the plan, treat every little business decision as an experiment. Did it pass? Did it fail? Pivot, move forward, and just keep going and try to have a good time with it. I think it's really a fun process if you allow yourself to have fun with it. Worst case scenario, you have to go back to work and get a great job making six figures. Big deal. Like, it's not really that big of a deal at the end of the day. Yeah, some of the disruptors that I'm seeing is in New York, there's a company called the Financial Gym. And I've been following this one very closely because I'm very fascinated with the business model. And essentially how it works is you pay a monthly membership fee, much like a gym membership. And you go in there and you have a coach that sits there and helps you with every little area of your life. Now, the cool thing is it's in person. And we're starting to see that even though people are willing to do online coaching, they still want that humanized interaction. And so I think that's an interesting piece to note, but that's a cool model if it would work for you. The other models that I'm seeing that are really successful are group coaching, where instead of just working with people one-on-one, you can have 10 people in a group and almost that peer-to-peer support. That's an interesting model. And then ultimately, I think the solution that will win, that we all have to figure out how to do, is how do you provide individual coaching and give people the one-on-one attention that they need for a decent price at scale. That's the tricky piece. So I haven't seen any models do a great job of that other than hiring assistant coaches and training the trainer, so to speak. that model I think can work here, but that's what people are looking for, is a little bit more humanized. So I think that's the models that we're starting to see become up and coming.
As a financial professional, what you're doing is you're helping people articulate their goals, giving them a plan on how to get there. And I was really, really pleased to hear what Whitney's top 3 qualities and characteristics are for tomorrow's financial professional.
Being incredibly kind and empathetic. I think this is everything. We have a lot of very loud voices from financial gurus that are not so kind and empathetic and make you feel like crap. And when people are hiring a coach, they want that sternness, but they don't want to feel like garbage after every single call. So I think you have to be able to be empathetic and understand where they're coming from. The second characteristic I think that you have to have as a good financial coach is you have to be willing and able to get into the weeds on that day-to-day. You have to call people out on their transactions. You have to hold them accountable. I think those are the characteristics that a good financial coach will see. You don't have to know all the answers. I don't know all the answers. When somebody approaches me about a scenario that I have no clue about, I will tell them, I don't know about this, but I will do some research and I'll get back to you. And if I can't figure it out, I'll point you to somebody that can. And so I think those are all of the humbleness that comes with that too, of being able to say, I don't know, I'm not a pro here, but I can send you to somebody that is. Those are the characteristics I think makes for a good financial coach.
Yeah, you hit on something too, because even with me being the face of my business, being the point man, I still have this network of people that behind me help with all this stuff. Like I don't do everything, so I think that's just important to keep in mind. Maybe as not to be intimidating for somebody who's like, well, I can't do this on my own. Well, you don't have to do it on your own. You build a great network of competent individuals, and you utilize that network.
Absolutely. So for a financial coach, it's what financial advisors do I trust that I would send my client to? Who would be a good fit here? You will definitely need to get in touch with some counselors. Who's a good marriage therapist? Who can I send my people to? So I think it's getting to, you build your own connection, of course, local and nationally, and see who do you want to refer people to? And that will come back to you as well. But I think it's really important to stay in your lane and not try to feel like you have to do all things for all people. Be the expert at a few really key things and then send them off to somebody else that's better than you at the others.
Well, as you can see, I had a blast talking with Whitney. She is a real gem and treat to talk to, and she's doing a lot of great things in this space, and I applaud her for her thought leadership and what she's doing with the Money Nerds podcast and her coaching practice. Make sure you check out the podcast. Check out the real stories that she's doing with just everyday humans that are traveling their own financial journey, and her 5-Tip Friday. I've loved that you've watched this and that you're participating and a member of this community. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.